What if everything you believed about love was flipped? What if desire isn't proof of love, but a test before it? In a world where women are told to chase, impress, and perform, the truth is simple. Real love doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing yourself first. Lust is loud, but love listens. And when you stop running toward noise and start standing in stillness, you don't just attract attention, you attract respect, depth, and the love you truly deserve. Lust is a powerful, instinctive force. It can strike in an instant, sparked by a glance, a smile, or the subtle sway of confidence. It's raw, electric, and often misunderstood. It feels like it means something, like it's pointing toward connection. But the truth is that it rarely does, at least not yet. Lust is a biological reaction, a momentary spark ignited by visual cues or perceived chemistry. It pulls attention, awakens desire, and makes someone feel seen, but not necessarily known. And for many women, the confusion begins when that initial spark is mistaken for something deeper, something lasting. The real truth is that lust is easy. It's not hard to be attracted to someone's physical appearance or magnetic energy. Love doesn't require depth, vulnerability, or emotional effort. It's automatic, instinctual. But love, that's different. Love isn't immediate. Love doesn't rush in with flashing lights and fire. Love is slow, layered, and thoughtful. It takes its time because it needs space to breathe, to learn, and to trust. In the early stages of meeting someone, the difference between being noticed and being truly valued is subtle but vital. Being desired is flattering, but it's not the same as being cherished. Lust thrives on fantasy, while love thrives on reality. And fantasy doesn't need to know your dreams, your fears, your strength, or your scars. It's content with the surface. But when someone slows down and begins to ask real questions, to sit with the quiet moments, to listen without an agenda, that's when something else begins to grow. That's where love begins to form, not in the rush, but in the recognition. The challenge is that many women get stuck trying to hold someone in that early phase, hoping the spark will somehow evolve into a flame. They try to keep their attention, to prolong the high of lust, instead of letting it either burn out or evolve into something more substantial. But attention is not affection, and physical attraction is not a promise. It's not a commitment. It's not intimacy. Intimacy requires emotional risk. It requires patience. It means revealing who you really are, not just what you look like or how you make someone feel in the moment. There's a dangerous myth that many internalize that if the physical spark is strong enough, the rest will follow. That if someone desires you enough, they'll eventually love you. But the spark alone isn't enough. The reality is that someone can be deeply attracted to you and still never choose to invest emotionally. Lust may open the door, but it doesn't guarantee someone will walk through it. What determines that choice is how they experience you beyond the surface. That's why emotional connection matters. That's why boundaries matter. That's why showing up with honesty, values, and self-respect changes everything. When someone experiences you, not as a performance, but as a person, fully, unapologetically, they're faced with a decision, engage or exit. And that decision is less about the initial chemistry and more about how they respond to your emotional presence. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about being real enough that someone either steps up or steps away. When you understand that lust is not love, you stop trying to win affection by keeping someone physically interested. You start focusing on creating space for deeper connection, for shared values, and for emotional intimacy. You stop needing constant validation because you know your worth isn't tied to who desires you, but to who truly sees you. This shift in perspective creates a filter. It weeds out those who are only interested in the high and makes room for those who are capable of holding space for the low, the quiet, the real. There's power in not rushing, in observing instead of assuming, in allowing space for someone to reveal whether they're capable of depth. Lust may be loud, but love is revealed in stillness. It shows up in consistency, in presence, in how someone responds when things aren't easy. It shows up in how they handle your truth, not just your beauty. And those things aren't evident in the first few moments or even in the first few weeks. They unfold over time. They require you to hold space for your own needs, to stay rooted in your own values, even when it's tempting to chase the high of attention. It's easy to feel frustrated or disillusioned when someone shows interest and then pulls away. But if that interest was built on lust alone, it was never meant to last. That withdrawal isn't about your worth, it's about the limits of their capacity. Some people are only available for surface level connection. They haven't done the emotional work to go deeper, or they simply aren't looking for that. Either way, your role isn't to convince them. Your role is to be aligned with what you truly want and to only invest in those who show up with matching energy. Holding that standard can feel lonely at times. It can feel like you're missing out. But what you're actually doing is making room for something genuine, for someone emotionally present, for a relationship that doesn't just excite but enriches. And when that comes along, you'll recognize it because it won't need chasing. It won't just ignite your body, it will calm your mind. It will feel like safety, not suspense. Choosing not to confuse lust with love is a powerful act of emotional self-care. It protects your heart from investing in illusions and opens the door for real, grounded connection. When you understand that love isn't born in the moment someone wants you, but in the way they show up consistently over time, you stop being distracted by sparks and start seeking substance. That's where real intimacy begins, not in the heat of a glance, but in the warmth of emotional presence that follows. The way someone is treated is directly tied to what they tolerate. Standards are not rules given to others. They are reflections of self-worth projected through behavior, boundaries, and expectations. When a person holds high standards, they send a powerful message without needing to say a word. This is how I expect to be treated. This is not about arrogance or ego. It's about clarity. It's about knowing what aligns with one's values and refusing to settle for anything less. Attraction is easy to spark. Eye contact, a witty comment, a subtle touch. These things can create intrigue, but lasting interest, deep desire, and genuine respect, those aren't created by looks or flirtation. They are forged in the presence of standards. When someone senses that a person is not easily swayed by attention, charm, or empty promises, they begin to view that person differently. Now, listen no longer as someone who merely fits into their momentary desires, but as someone they must rise to meet. Standards shift dynamics. They create contrast in a world where many are too quick to accept breadcrumbs, too quick to give access without discernment. The truth is, people test limits all the time, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. When someone discovers there are no boundaries, they begin to view the connection as something they control rather than something they must contribute to. But when they meet someone who knows their worth, who isn't afraid to say no, to walk away, or to demand more through action, they are met with something rare, and rarity creates value. This value isn't about playing games. It's not about manipulation or pretending to care less. It's about authenticity. It's about showing that one's time, energy, and emotional investment are not handed out without thought. They are earned through mutual effort, through consistency, and through genuine alignment. It's in the way someone holds themselves when faced with attention that doesn't match their emotional needs. It's in the calm confidence of saying, "This isn't enough for me," not with anger, but with grace. People often assume that setting high standards means being difficult or demanding. In reality, it means being deeply self-aware. It means having taken the time to understand what brings peace, what builds trust, and what honors personal growth. When those things are clearly defined, it becomes almost impossible to accept behavior that violates them. Because once someone has experienced the power of alignment with themselves and with others, anything less feels loud, uncomfortable, and unsustainable. There is a unique kind of magnetism that comes from self-respect. It draws in those who are ready to engage, and it repels those who aren't. That's not rejection, it's redirection. And it's necessary. When a person doesn't lower their standards to gain temporary validation, they create space for real, meaningful connections to form. They stop trying to be chosen and start choosing themselves first. This shift is subtle but transformational. It turns someone from a passive participant in their love life to an active architect of it. The world constantly tells people to be agreeable, to be easygoing, to not ask for too much. But asking for more isn't wrong, it's essential. Because asking for more doesn't mean being ungrateful. It means knowing that surface level attention can't satisfy deep emotional needs. It means believing that depth, consistency, and mutual effort are not bonuses. They are the minimum requirements for something real. People often fear that holding high standards will push others away, and sometimes it does. But those who walk away when faced with someone's truth were never meant to stay. The right connection isn't threatened by standards, it's inspired by them. It sees boundaries as invitations, not barriers. It understands that emotional depth requires emotional maturity, and that presence, effort, and care are not burdens, but privileges. When a person embodies this mindset, they stop attracting those who are only interested in the thrill of the chase. They begin to attract those who are interested in the reality of connection. They stop being viewed as an option and start being respected as a priority. Not because they demanded it, but because their behavior made it clear that anything less wasn't welcome. There is something incredibly powerful about knowing that one doesn't have to perform or prove in order to be loved. That love doesn't require shrinking, compromising, or pretending. That it flows more easily to those who already love themselves enough to walk away from what doesn't align. This internal strength is what creates the outer standards. And these standards act as filters, keeping out the noise and letting in only what truly deserves a place. Sometimes it can feel tempting to bend those standards when loneliness creeps in, when attraction clouds judgment, or when the promise of connection feels too good to pass up. But bending often leads to breaking one's own trust, breaking emotional alignment, breaking peace. The cost of abandoning one's standards is rarely worth the temporary high of being desired. Because desire fades, but self-respect must live on. When someone chooses to live with intention, when they stop giving unearned access, and when they begin to ask whether a connection supports their long-term emotional well-being, they are no longer at the mercy of fleeting attraction. They become a force of clarity in a world filled with confusion. They no longer chase potential, they attract alignment. Standards are not walls, they are doors. But only the right people will walk through them. And that's the point. Because when connection is built on self-respect, when attraction is matched with emotional integrity, and when presence is met with standards, what's created is not just a relationship, it's a partnership rooted in something real. Attraction can be magnetic, but without emotional maturity, it often leads to misalignment and disappointment. Emotional maturity is what transforms fleeting chemistry into something sustainable. It allows two people to move beyond surface-level interactions and into the kind of connection that builds trust, safety, and depth. While lust and instant attraction might draw two people together, it's emotional maturity that determines whether that bond can grow into something meaningful. Many people chase intensity, not realizing that it often masquerades as connection. The rush of a flirtatious conversation, the thrill of being desired, the excitement of a new possibility, All of these can feel like the beginning of love, but none of them necessarily indicate emotional compatibility. In fact, many chase that high because they're unfamiliar with the quiet steadiness that emotional maturity brings. It doesn't create fireworks at every moment. It brings calm. It makes space for authenticity. It invites vulnerability. Emotional maturity is the ability to be fully present with someone, not just when things are easy, but especially when they're hard. It's the willingness to have uncomfortable conversations, to communicate needs with clarity and compassion, to listen without defensiveness, and to show up consistently over time. These qualities don't often show up in the very beginning of an interaction. They reveal themselves slowly through patience, self-awarenesses, and the courage to be real. The challenge is that many people are conditioned to perform instead of connect. There's a desire to impress, to be liked, to avoid conflict or rejection. But emotional maturity requires moving past performance. It requires letting go of the need to be perfect or to constantly please. It allows space for truth, messy, unfiltered human truth. It says, this is who I am when I'm not trying to be chosen. And when both people can meet in that space, a foundation for love begins to form. Love that is rooted in emotional maturity looks very different from love that is rooted in attachment or fantasy. It isn't born from fear of being alone. It doesn't cling or chase. It allows space, honors individuality, and values emotional safety above drama or intensity. It doesn't play games. It seeks resolution instead of conflict. It knows that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the key to intimacy. When someone has developed emotional maturity, they're no longer reactive in their relationships. They don't base their actions solely on how they feel in the moment. They're guided by a deeper awareness of how their behavior affects the dynamic. They understand that emotional responsibility is not just about managing their own feelings, but also about creating a safe space for someone else to feel, express, and grow. This maturity allows for emotional pacing. It doesn't rush into connection. Even if the attraction is strong, it takes time to observe, to listen, to learn. It isn't afraid to slow down, because it knows that depth can't be forced. And that discernment protects against the illusion of connection that's based only on chemistry. It allows someone to ask the right questions, to assess alignment, and to notice red flags without ignoring them in the name of hope. Someone who operates from emotional maturity doesn't need a relationship to define their worth. They've done the inner work to recognize their value with or without external validation. This self-awareness prevents them from seeking love from a place of lack. Instead, they enter relationships from a place of wholeness. They know that the right connection will enhance their life, not complete it. This distinction is subtle but critical. Without emotional maturity, even the strongest attraction will eventually hit a wall. Miscommunication, unmet expectations, and unhealed wounds will turn passion into confusion. But with maturity, those same challenges become opportunities for growth. They aren't feared, they're faced. Not with blame, but with a shared commitment to understanding. Emotional maturity brings curiosity instead of criticism. It replaces silent treatment with conversations. It allows two people to stand on the same team, even when they disagree. This kind of presence changes everything. It makes a person feel seen, not just admired. It allows them to relax into themselves, knowing that they won't be punished for having emotions, needs, or imperfections. It invites them to show up fully without fear of being too much. And that safety is where love grows. Not in the spark, but in the security. Many people spend their lives chasing the intensity of early connection, thinking that love should always feel like fireworks. But real love feels more like coming home. It's steady, grounding, and real. It's not without excitement, but the excitement is layered with peace, with mutual understanding, with depth. It feels safe enough to exhale. It feels honest enough to trust. It doesn't ask for performance, it invites presence. The ability to hold space for another person's emotions while managing one's own is a superpower in relationships. It takes practice, humility, and a deep desire to understand rather than control. It requires someone to look at their own patterns, to take accountability, and to break cycles that no longer serve them. This work isn't easy, but it's essential. It's the work that prepares someone for real love. Emotional maturity isn't just about how someone treats others, it's also about how they treat themselves. It shows up in their ability to self-soothe, to regulate their emotions, to honor their boundaries, and to make decisions that align with their values. It's the voice that says, I won't abandon myself to keep someone else. And it's that strength that allows someone to enter a relationship as an equal, not as a rescuer or a project. The irony is that emotional maturity often looks quiet from the outside. It doesn't announce itself loudly, but its effects are profound. It creates a relationship where trust is built over time, where both people feel supported in their growth, and where love isn't just a feeling, it's a daily choice. A choice made easier by the emotional environment that's been cultivated together. In a world that often prioritizes appearance over substance and attention over intention, emotional maturity is a rare and precious trait. It's what turns the heat of attraction into the warmth of companionship. It's what makes someone not just desirable, but dependable. Not just exciting, but irreplaceable. Emotional maturity may not be what sparks the initial fire, but it's absolutely what keeps it burning through all the seasons that follow. Love has a rhythm that's different from desire. While desire rushes in, fast and loud, love moves with a quieter pace. It doesn't beg for attention, chase validation, or demand constant reassurance. It settles into the stillness of presence and grows in the soil of patience. There's a deep kind of power in being able to sit in that stillness without fear, to allow space for connection to evolve naturally, rather than trying to force or fabricate it. In that calm, something extraordinary happens. Clarity emerges, and from that clarity, love is chosen. Trying to be chosen through effort, through proving, through adjusting oneself to fit into someone else's needs often leads to exhaustion. It creates a dynamic where self-worth becomes dependent on another's attention or affection. But real love doesn't blossom from performance. It doesn't require a constant display of value or worthiness. It arrives in the presence of confidence, in the serenity of someone who no longer needs to convince anyone of their value. That kind of love is attracted to wholeness, not neediness. When someone rests in the stillness of self-acceptance, they stop chasing things that were never meant to stay. They no longer pursue affection in spaces where they feel emotionally unsafe. They no longer interpret silence as a challenge to fill or inconsistency as a problem they're meant to fix. They begin to understand that the right love will not be threatened by stillness. It will be revealed in it. Because stillness invites truth. It shows who leans in and who fades away. It shows who is ready and who is merely passing time. And most importantly, it shows where peace lives. This quiet power doesn't come from indifference. It comes from emotional maturity, from learning that love is not something to be earned through hustle, but something to be experienced in alignment. When alignment exists, love flows without being pushed. It doesn't need to be manipulated or manufactured. It doesn't require one to shrink, chase, or question their worth. It feels steady, even if it takes time to arrive. Living in that space means being comfortable with solitude, not in a lonely way, but in an empowered way. It's the understanding that being alone is not a punishment, but a sacred space for clarity. It's where someone realizes that they don't need to hold space for people who make them feel small, confused, or replaceable. It's where they learn that their peace is the most honest compass they have. If something disturbs that peace consistently, it's not love. It's a lesson. There is strength in staying still when everything inside wants to move, when the heart wants to chase, to reach out, to seek closure or clarity from another person. Choosing stillness can feel counterintuitive, but in that pause, so much is revealed. The energy that once went into proving or pleasing is redirected inward. Healing happens there. Self-respect is fortified there. A deeper kind of discernment is developed. The kind that stops romanticizing mixed signals or excusing emotional unavailability. This stillness invites one to reflect instead of react. It allows space to ask the right questions. Does this connection honor who I am? Do I feel emotionally safe here? Am I compromising my peace for proximity? These aren't easy questions, but they are essential, because love that's built on a shaky foundation of hope or potential will never provide the emotional grounding needed to thrive. Real love, the kind that nourishes and strengthens, must begin with inner alignment, and that can only be found in stillness. Sometimes the fear of missing out compels people to rush into situations that feel exciting but ultimately leave them depleted. But urgency is rarely the friend of wisdom. Slowing down offers perspective. It reveals whether a connection is based on emotional reciprocity or simply convenience. It helps distinguish between temporary thrill and lasting compatibility. Love chosen in stillness is thoughtful, intentional, and secure. When someone begins to embody this way of being, they carry a different energy. They stop needing to explain themselves to those unwilling to understand. They stop begging for closure or clarity. They stop waiting for someone else to define the relationship or dictate the pace. Instead, they tune in to how they feel, to the energy that's being offered, and to the way their own nervous system responds in someone's presence. Their body becomes their guide, and the body doesn't lie. When it feels safe, it relaxes. When it feels cherished, it softens. When it feels like it's being emotionally starved, it tenses. This level of awareness allows a person to walk away from confusion without needing drama. It gives them the ability to release situations that no longer serve their growth, not with resentment, but with peace. They understand that love isn't always meant to be kept. Sometimes the most loving act is letting go, and that act becomes easier when someone realizes they are not defined by who stays or who leaves, but by how they continue to show up for themselves through it all. Choosing love in stillness also means choosing honesty. It means having the courage to admit when something isn't enough, even when it looks good on the surface. It means acknowledging when the emotional effort is one-sided, even if the chemistry is strong. It's not about chasing perfection, it's about honoring alignment. And alignment only becomes visible when everything else is quiet. People often wait for someone else to validate their feelings, to offer certainty, or to promise commitment. But waiting passively often leads to disappointment. Stillness is not passivity. It is a decision. It is not getting stuck. A decision to stop trying to fix, to force, or to fight for something that doesn't feel right. It's the space where power is reclaimed. Not power over others, but power over one's own life, emotions, and direction. This approach to love may not be flashy. It may not follow the scripts of romance films or the adrenaline of pursuit-based dating, but it is real, it is grounded, it is free from chaos. It doesn't just promise connection, it builds it moment by moment through mutual respect, clarity, and effort. That kind of love doesn't need convincing. It shows up, it chooses, and it stays not because it has to, but because it wants to. In this stillness, something beautiful is discovered. The realization that love is not found by doing more, giving more, or being more. It is found in the quiet confidence of knowing that you are already enough. That kind of love can only find you when you stop searching and start standing in your truth, in your peace, and in the fullness of who you already are.